Jack Mason didn't expect much from another graveyard shift. It was just another night, another round of badge scans, hallway patrols, and lukewarm coffee from the security desk at Metropolitan Plaza. The paycheck wouldn't stretch far, but it would keep the lights on and Emily's school lunch paid. That was enough. He clocked out at 5:03 a.m., muscles aching from too many nights spent on his feet. His mind was already drifting toward home, toward the smell of burnt toast, the sound of Emily humming while she braided her hair, and the 3 hours of sleep he could afford before his next shift at the coffee shop. Routine, familiar, predictable. Then he saw the fire. At first he thought it was the street lights playing tricks in the early dawn, but as he rounded the bend on Route 45, the source became horrifically clear. A red Ferrari, mangled against a guardrail, smoke billowing from its hood. Flames licked the undercarriage, growing fast, greedy. Jack pulled over without thinking. His instincts, sharpened not by training, but by years of fatherhood, kicked in hard. Someone might still be inside. The driver's door was crumpled shut. Flames spit from the engine block. He grabbed his jacket, wrapped it around his hands, and smashed his elbow into the passenger side window. A woman, unconscious. Blood trickled from her temple. Blonde hair matted to her forehead. He couldn't see her face clearly through the smoke, but he could see the seatbelt trapping her in place and the growing blaze beneath her. Come on," Jack muttered, yanking the door open with a groan of twisted metal. The heat was brutal, blistering. He didn't have time to think. One cut, one lift, one desperate pull. Her body was heavier than he expected, limp, dead weight, heels dragging against the concrete as he staggered backward. 10 steps. 5. Then the car exploded behind him. The shock wave knocked them both to the ground. Shards of glass and flame lit the dawn sky. Alarms blared in the distance, and Jack tasted smoke in the back of his throat as he coughed, shielding her body with his. She groaned, moved slightly. Alive. Sirens approached fast now, red and blue slicing through the dimness. Jack looked down at the woman cradled in his arms. Her eyes fluttered open for the briefest second, hazy and confused. Then they closed again. Paramedics swarmed them, and Jack let go, blinking soot from his lashes. He didn't stay to give his name. He didn't wait for recognition. His hands throbbed with searing pain, but all he could think about was getting home. Emily would be waking up soon, and there was toast to make. By the time the ambulance roared off into the breaking dawn, Jack Mason had already disappeared into the quiet streets of the city. The smell of slightly burnt toast drifted through the tiny apartment like an alarm clock made of smoke and memory. Jack stirred on the couch, his body aching in ways it hadn't for years. Every muscle protested as he sat up, and for a second, he could still hear the explosion, the fireball lighting up the night, the heat biting into his skin. His hands. God, his hands. He flexed them gingerly. Red, raw, blistered. Wrapped last night in a t-shirt soaked under the faucet, but now uncovered, angry and sore. No time to dwell. Emily would be up. "Dad, I think the toast is done," her voice called from the kitchen. 12 going on 20, that girl. She'd learned to navigate their chaotic mornings better than most adults, especially after Jack's night shifts. She handled burnt toast and broken coffee makers with the same quiet competence she used in chess matches. Jack dragged himself upright. His uniform still smelled faintly of smoke, but he hadn't had the energy to change out of it. He stumbled into the kitchenette just as Emily was sliding scrambled eggs onto 2 mismatched plates. "You didn't have to make breakfast, sweetheart," he murmured, kissing the top of her head. "You looked tired when you came in," she said matter-of-factly, already reaching for the jam. Her dark hair was braided neatly, hands quick and practiced. Another skill she'd had to master too early. Jack sat down with a grunt, trying to hide the wince as his burned palms met the edge of the table. "You smell like barbecue," Emily added, scrunching her nose. "Everything okay?" Just a bit of excitement at work. He tried to keep his voice light. Nothing to worry about. Emily paused, fork in hand. Her eyes, deep brown like her mother's, narrowed, sharp and unrelenting. She'd inherited more than just Sarah's eyes. She had her intuition too. The burns on your hands say different. Jack looked down at them, exposed in the soft morning light. He hadn't even realized he'd forgotten to rewrap them. They looked worse now, angrier somehow. He sighed. It's nothing, Em. Just helped someone out of a tough spot, like your mom would have done. Emily's expression softened at the mention of her mother. Though Sarah had been gone 5 years now, lost to a drunk driver in a moment that shattered everything, Emily still spoke of her like she might walk through the door any minute. Yeah, she nodded, just like Mom would have done. Jack forced a smile, heart twisting. He watched as Emily packed her lunch with quiet precision. A sandwich, an apple, a juice box. Nothing fancy, but made with the same care as a gourmet meal. A crumpled late rent notice on the counter caught his eye. He tucked it into his jacket pocket before she could see. Chess club meets today, Emily said as she zipped up her backpack. Ms. Rodriguez says I might be team captain if I keep practicing. Jack's pride rose like warm air, pushing away the fatigue. That's my girl. You're going to run that whole school one day. Emily rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her smile. You say that about everything. Because it's always true. Jack glanced at the clock. Time for shift number 2, this time behind the espresso machine at the daily grind. Ready to head out. We can walk together until your school turn-off. As they stepped outside, Emily silently slipped her hand into his uninjured one. She didn't mention the tremble in his other, or the way he winced as they walked down the stairs. The morning sun washed over the cracked sidewalks and graffiti-stained buildings, making them look softer than they had any right to. Dad? Emily asked quietly, watching a squirrel dart across the sidewalk. Do you ever wish things were different? Jack squeezed her hand. I wish your mom was still here. I wish I didn't have to work so much. But I never wish for a different life with you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Em. She nodded slowly, thoughtful, processing. I just worry sometimes about the rent, about you. Jack stopped walking, turned to face her. Hey, that's my job, remember? Yours is to be brilliant at school and amazing at chess. Let me handle the grown-up stuff. They reached the corner where their paths split. Emily toward her school, Jack toward the cafe. She hugged him tight, careful of his hands. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. As he watched her walk away, backpack bouncing with each step, Jack felt the sting of the rent notice in his pocket. His palms throbbed, the ghost of fire still clinging to his skin. He hadn't thought twice about running into those flames, just like he hadn't thought twice about working 2 jobs, or skipping meals so Emily could have what she needed. Some choices aren't choices at all. They're just what you do for love. The hum of the city far below was almost soothing, like a distant lullaby of movement and momentum. Sarah Chen stood barefoot in front of her floor-to-ceiling windows, one hand absently touching the butterfly bandage on her forehead. 40 stories beneath her, Boston stirred to life, honking horns, glowing lights, people chasing purpose. But up here, everything was still. The silence felt louder than the explosion. Her Ferrari, one of 4, was likely nothing but twisted steel and smoke in a junkyard now. The accident had made headlines, of course. A luxury car inferno, the news called it. But no one knew her name yet. No one knew she had been the driver pulled from that wreckage. And no one knew who had saved her. Not even Sarah. She remembered heat, blinding smoke, the sharp sting of blood in her eyes, and a voice, steady, gentle, wrapping around her like a shield in the chaos. I've got you. You're safe now. The memory brought a chill, not from fear, but from something else, a kind of clarity she hadn't felt in years. Her intercom crackled. Ms. Chen, the board is asking about your absence from this morning's strategy meeting. Sarah pressed the talk button. Tell them I'm taking a personal day. Doctor's orders. It wasn't entirely a lie. The ER doctor had recommended rest, though she doubted he meant standing for hours, staring out over the city, replaying a moment that had stripped her of every illusion. She turned away from the window. Her penthouse, meticulously decorated, felt colder today, too curated, too hollow, like a showroom version of a life no one truly lived. On her desk, her corporate ID badge sat next to her phone. Sarah Chen, CEO, Chen Innovations. The smiling headshot stared back at her. Polished, poised, perfect. It didn't match the woman who'd been pulled from a burning car by a stranger who didn't ask her name, didn't stay for recognition, didn't try to leverage the moment for anything. He just disappeared. The intercom buzzed again. Ms. Chen, your brother is here. She sighed. Send him in. The office doors swung open as Thomas Chen strode in. Sharp Armani suit, sharper expression. What the hell, Sarah? He barked. You almost die in a fire and I find out from the news? What were you thinking? I was thinking the road was wet, she replied, her voice flat, and I took the curve too fast. He dropped a newspaper onto her desk. The headline screamed, Luxury Car Explosion on Route 45, Mystery Hero Saves Woman. That was you, wasn't it? She didn't answer. And the guy who pulled you out, have you found him yet? Vetted him? Made sure he won't talk to the press? He didn't even know who I was. Thomas froze. You're telling me some random nobody saves you and just walks away? Yes. Her voice softened. And that's exactly why I can't stop thinking about him. Thomas groaned. We need to find him. Have him sign an NDA at least. No security teams, no investigations, she said firmly. If I'm going to find him, I want to do it my way. You're serious? I am. Sarah returned to the window, her gaze drifting across the skyline. For years, she had lived in a world of acquisitions and quarterly reports. Success measured in profit margins and boardroom applause. But in one terrible, searing moment, someone had looked at her, not as a CEO or a billionaire, but simply as a person worth saving. And for the first time in years, that was all she wanted to be. Just Sarah. The daily grind smelled like it always did. Coffee beans, sugar, and a hint of burnt milk from the old espresso machine that groaned every time someone ordered a cappuccino. Jack moved behind the counter, his bandaged hands working slower than usual, but still steady. The pain was constant now, like an old radio playing in the background, annoying but ignorable. He hadn't wanted to take time off, couldn't afford to. The manager had given him one day out of guilt after seeing the news clip, but Jack had insisted on coming back. Bills didn't pay themselves. Rent wasn't going to wait. The morning rush was picking up, voices echoing, cups clinking. Jack barely noticed the woman who had been sitting quietly in the corner for the past hour, nursing a cappuccino and pretending to read. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, hair pulled back into a ponytail. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable, until she spoke. Grande caramel latte, a businessman barked into his phone, not bothering to make eye contact. Name for the order? Jack asked, already reaching for the cup. Sarah. He froze. That voice, different from the one shouting into the phone, soft, familiar, real. Jack looked up slowly, and their eyes met. It was her, the woman from the car. She gave a tentative smile. Hi. Jack stared for a beat too long. Then two. The sound of milk frothing snapped him back. You, he whispered. Me, Sarah replied gently, stepping aside to wait for her drink. His hands moved on autopilot, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. She was really here. Not in a magazine, not in his memories. Here, in his world, in his coffee shop. Before he could say anything more, the front door swung open. Dad! Emily's voice rang out, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders as she burst inside. The water's out at school. They sent us home early, and she stopped. Her eyes landed on Sarah. Sorry, she said quickly, glancing between them. Are you helping a customer? Jack looked helplessly at Sarah, who only smiled. I can watch her, she offered, surprising even herself. If that's okay, while you finish your shift. Emily studied her, sharp eyes flicking to the bandage on Sarah's forehead, then back to Jack. Recognition clicked into place faster than he could stop it. You're the lady from the car, Emily blurted out. The one Dad saved? Jack nearly dropped the milk pitcher. Emily, it's okay, Sarah said, kneeling slightly to meet Emily's gaze. I'm Sarah. She offered her hand with the same grace she used in boardrooms, but with a softness Jack had never seen before. Would you like to share a hot chocolate with me? I'd love to hear about your dad's heroic moment, since he won't tell me himself. Emily beamed. He's pretty modest. He didn't even tell me about the burns until I saw them. Emily, Jack warned, but there was no real heat in his voice. It's true, Emily said, turning back to Sarah. He just said he helped someone out. Like running into a burning car is just a normal Tuesday night. Sarah laughed, the sound bright and genuine. She met Jack's eyes over Emily's head, and something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, recognition, a connection forged in smoke and fire. Hot chocolate sounds great, Emily decided, and I can tell you about the chess tournament I'm practicing for. They settled into a corner booth, Emily chattering, while Sarah listened intently. Jack watched from behind the counter, something warm and strange blooming in his chest. The sight of them, Emily animated, Sarah leaning in like every word mattered. It felt unreal, but also right. By 10:00, the rush had died down. Jack's manager waved him off for an early break, nodding toward his daughter and Sarah. Go, she said. They're your priority. He approached the table cautiously. Sarah looked up, smiling. Emily was mid-story about a complicated chess opening she'd been trying to master. Dad, she said, scooting over, did you know Sarah used to play chess in college? Among other things, Sarah added with a playful glance. Jack sat, suddenly aware of how close she was, how natural this felt. I wanted to thank you, she said softly, not just for pulling me from the car, but for what you didn't do afterward. He tilted his head, confused. You didn't ask my name, didn't wait for credit, didn't follow up. No press, no photos. That kind of genuine help is rare in my world. Jack shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said firmly. They wouldn't. Trust me, I know. Emily looked between them, her eyes narrowing with a tween's intuition. Dad, she said slyly, maybe we should invite Sarah for dinner. You know, to say thank you for watching me today. Oh, I couldn't impose, Sarah began. It's just spaghetti, Emily interrupted, undeterred. But Dad makes the sauce from scratch. It was Mom's recipe. At the mention of his late wife, Jack's heart gave a painful twist. But the weight wasn't sharp. It was softer now. Less ache, more memory. Sarah hesitated, then reached into her purse, pulled out a napkin, and scribbled something. My personal number, she said, sliding it across the table. Not my office one, in case you want to take Emily up on that offer. Their fingers brushed. That same jolt, like something had been waiting to reconnect, passed between them. I should go, Sarah said, standing. But I meant what I said, Jack. Thank you for reminding me what real humanity looks like. She left with one last smile at Emily, who turned to her dad the moment the door closed. She's nice and pretty, and she listens when I talk about chess. Just saying. Jack stared at the napkin in his hand, her number folded neatly, real, tangible. Maybe, just maybe. Fate wasn't finished with them yet. The magazine hit the break room table with a heavy thud. Jack barely glanced up from his coffee. His fingers were wrapped carefully around the paper cup, his palms still tender beneath the bandages. He'd been quiet all morning, half-focused, thoughts drifting to a napkin folded in his wallet. Her number, still untouched. "Hey, Mason." Mike, one of the day shift guards, nudged the glossy cover toward him. "Isn't this the car you pulled that woman from?" Jack glanced at the headline. Sarah Chen, America's youngest tech CEO, reshaping the future. His stomach turned. The photo showed her standing confidently in front of a towering glass building, hair perfectly styled, corporate logo gleaming in the background. The same woman who had smiled over a shared hot chocolate with his daughter. The same one who had written her number on a napkin like it was the most normal thing in the world. His world tilted. "Wait," Mike said, flipping pages. "It says she's worth, like, billions. Billions, dude. That's wild. You saved a real-life billionaire." Jack didn't respond. The air felt thicker now. He could hear every sound. The hum of the vending machine, the ticking of the wall clock, the soft murmur of conversations outside the door. But it all faded beneath the pounding of his own thoughts. She hadn't told him. She'd sat there in his life, on his turf, speaking gently with Emily, sipping coffee like any other regular person. She'd listened to Emily's chess dreams and complimented Jack's spaghetti sauce, all while knowing full well that her world existed far, far above his. And now, what? What did she want? He picked up the magazine, eyes scanning the fine print. Educational initiatives, philanthropic ventures, rumors of pressure from her board to settle down, quotes about legacy and responsibility. A knot formed in his gut. Was this all just another one of her projects? A curious CEO fascinated by how the other half lived? His phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Can we invite Sarah for dinner tonight? I think she'd really like it. Please, Dad?" He closed his eyes. He could still hear Sarah's laugh in the coffee shop. See the way she looked at Emily, not with pity, but with genuine interest. And yet, the image of her standing in front of her tech empire loomed larger. What could he offer her? A small apartment with peeling paint? A budget so tight it cracked every time the rent was due? He stood abruptly, knocking over the cup. Coffee soaked into the table, ignored. Mike raised an eyebrow. "You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jack didn't answer. He walked out of the break room and down to the lobby, the magazine still in hand. Each step echoed like doubt in a hallway of concrete reality. Outside, the air was sharp with late spring chill. He found a bench and sat heavily, flipping the magazine over. Sarah Chen, billionaire, visionary, untouchable. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The napkin with her number was still tucked into the case, now creased at the corners. For a long moment, he just stared at it. Then, with a breath that felt heavier than it should have been, he dialed. It rang twice. "Jack?" Her voice, soft, hopeful. "Ms. Chen," he said, his tone clipped, formal. "Or should I say, CEO Chen?" There was silence on the other end. Then a quiet, "You saw the article. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was this all some kind of experiment?" "Jack, no," she said quickly. "It wasn't like that." "My daughter likes you," he said, voice rough. "She talks about you like you're already part of the family. You know what it'll do to her when you disappear?" "I'm not disappearing." "But you will." His voice cracked. "Because that's what people like you do. You float in, make things feel possible, and then vanish back into your real life. One where people like me, people who can barely make rent, don't belong. That's not fair." "No," he said softly. "What's not fair is letting her hope for something that can't last." He hung up. The magazine sat on his lap. Her photo smiled up at him, professional, untouchable. He stared at it for a long moment, then folded it in half, not throwing it away, but tucking it quietly into his jacket. A reminder. Some dreams, he told himself, weren't meant to come true. The knock came just after sunset. Jack wasn't expecting anyone. Emily was at the kitchen table, hunched over her chessboard, brow furrowed in focus. The apartment smelled faintly of tomato sauce and garlic. Jack's attempt to keep at least one part of their routine normal. He hesitated before answering, wiping his hands on a towel, heart inexplicably uneasy. When he opened the door, he froze. Sarah stood in the hallway, not in heels or a tailored dress. She wore jeans, sneakers, a light coat. Her hair was loose, falling naturally around her face, and in her hands she held a worn wooden chess set. "Hi," she said, voice softer than he'd ever heard it. Jack blinked. "What are you doing here?" "I missed our games," she said, glancing past him to the small apartment. "And I thought maybe we could talk. Really talk." Emily peeked from behind the kitchen counter. Her eyes widened. "Sarah?" Sarah smiled at her. "Hey, chess champion. I brought something." She held out the chess set. "It was my grandfather's. He taught me to play on it. Thought maybe you could take care of it for me?" Emily stepped forward, cradling the set like treasure. "It's beautiful." Jack looked between them, his daughter glowing, Sarah uncertain but brave. Every instinct told him to protect, to shield, to pull back. But something deeper, something warmer, told him to try. "Emily," he said, eyes still on Sarah, "why don't you get started on your homework while we talk for a minute?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. She clutched the chess set and disappeared into her room with a final hopeful glance over her shoulder. Jack opened the door wider, stepping aside. Sarah entered slowly. The apartment was small, lived in, and clean in the way that came from constant effort, not convenience. Her eyes scanned the family photos on the wall, the chess trophies, the grocery list pinned to the fridge. "You didn't return my messages," she said gently. "You didn't tell me who you were," he replied. "I wasn't hiding it," she said. "I just didn't want it to define the way you saw me. Everyone sees the title, the company, the money. You didn't. And that meant more than I knew how to explain." Jack crossed his arms, trying not to let his guard down. "You live in a world where people like me are footnotes, Sarah. And yet," she said, stepping closer, "you were the one who ran into fire. Not the board members, not my driver. You." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out 2 movie tickets. "There's a classic film festival at the State Theater tonight, Casablanca. I know it's not much, but I called Rosa, Emily's babysitter, and she said she's free. I already paid her. And before you say anything about charity, the tickets were $10, and I'm buying the popcorn." Jack stared at the tickets in her hand. Her eyes were clear, vulnerable, determined. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why try so hard?" Sarah didn't flinch. "Because when I'm with you and Emily, I feel like just me. Not a CEO, not a Chen, just a woman who almost died and realized she wanted more from life than profit margins and power plays." He exhaled, long and quiet. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Our lives, they don't fit together." "Then we'll build something new," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Something that fits us." Jack took the tickets from her hand. Their fingers brushed, and the same electric spark leapt between them. $10, huh? Plus popcorn," she said with a soft grin. Jack smiled. Not wide, not sure, but real. He called toward the hallway. "Emily?" She popped her head out instantly, expectant. "Get ready. We're going to a movie." The light in her eyes was worth every ounce of uncertainty. As Sarah followed Emily into the kitchen to help her find a sweater, Jack stood alone for a moment, staring at the tickets in his hand. 2 pieces of paper, nothing special, except maybe everything. The old warehouse didn't look like much. Peeling paint, busted windows, rusted signage that once spelled out Harrison Textiles. It sat on a corner lot in Jack's neighborhood, long abandoned, the kind of place people walk past without noticing. But today, Sarah stood in the center of the dust-covered floor, arms crossed, eyes gleaming. "I see it," she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. "See what? Mold? Rats?" Sarah smiled. Potential? He chuckled. You really are an optimist. I wasn't, she replied, brushing cobwebs from a broken window frame. Not until I met you and Emily. The idea had started small, almost accidentally. Over dinner one night, Jack mentioned how kids in the neighborhood didn't have a safe place to go after school. Emily had chimed in about her friends quitting chess because they didn't have transportation or space to play. Sarah had listened, really listened. And then she'd said two words that changed everything. Let's build. Not fund, not donate. Build together. The plan had unfolded quickly. A community center, chess club, tutoring rooms, after-school programs, small business workshops. Jack's experience in security and logistics would keep it grounded. Sarah's knowledge in business, structure, and strategy would help it thrive. And at the heart of it all, kids like Emily. Now, 2 weeks later, they stood in the echo of what would become something new. Emily darted across the cracked concrete floor, eyes wide with excitement. Can we paint a chessboard on the floor in the main room? Like a giant one? I don't see why not, Jack said. Long as I don't trip over a night on my way to the coffee station. Sarah laughed, already scribbling a note into her tablet. The transformation was more than architectural. Jack could feel something shifting inside himself, something he hadn't dared hope for in a long time. Possibility, not just survival, but growth, purpose, and maybe love. They worked side by side. Jack introduced Sarah to local contractors, people who trusted him because he was one of them. Sarah brought in architects who respected the building's history while designing for the future. Every evening, Emily set up her chessboard in the back office, already claiming it as hers. I think this is the beginning of something big, she said one night, moving her rook with confidence. Like the Queen's gambit. Sacrifice now, control later. Sarah glanced at Jack, smiling. Sounds familiar. Jack looked up from the budget spreadsheet they were building together. You sure you're okay doing this? People are going to talk. Let them, Sarah said without hesitation. I don't care what they think of me, but I care deeply about what this place could mean. For the city, for families, for kids like Em. She's been sleeping better, Jack admitted. More focused, more herself. She's blooming, Sarah said, because she sees you fighting for her future. Jack looked down, humbled. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've always tried to be what she needs. Sarah's hand reached across the desk. And now you're building something for others who need it too. They shared quiet moments like that, building not just a center, but a life. It wasn't perfect. They had arguments. Jack sometimes bristled at her business-first approach. Sarah struggled to adjust to the realities of a neighborhood that didn't run on schedules and KPIs. But they learned, from each other, for each other. One afternoon, as construction noise echoed through the skeleton of the building, Emily ran up, holding a piece of paper. Look what Ms. Rodriguez gave me, she beamed. She said I'm officially team captain for the chess club. Jack picked her up, ignoring the protest from his back. That's my girl. Sarah leaned over. First event at the center? Emily nodded. We can host a whole tournament here. For everyone. Even the kids from schools that don't have their own club. Sarah's eyes misted. That's exactly what I hope for. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the unfinished roof, Jack stood outside with Sarah, watching Emily teach one of the contractor's sons how to castle. You really think we can pull this off? Jack asked quietly. Sarah looked at him, not with corporate confidence, but something deeper. I don't just think it, I believe it. He nodded slowly, then added, This place, this project, it scares me, not because I don't want it, but because I do, and I don't know how to be a part of something so big. Sarah stepped closer, taking his hand. Then let's be scared together. Jack looked at her, The woman who had once only been a stranger, pulled from fire. Now she stood beside him, not just rebuilding a building, but building a life, a new beginning, a seed taking root. The lights in the community center were dimmed, soft amber bulbs casting a golden hue across the newly finished chess room. The grand opening was still weeks away, but tonight, the place belonged to just a few people, and one carefully planned surprise. Jack paced quietly near the windows, adjusting his collar for the 10th time. He wasn't used to suits, not ones that actually fit. Emily had picked this one out with Sarah's grandfather, Albert Chen, who now stood at the chessboard, pretending to rearrange pieces, though Jack knew he was just hiding his smile. "She has no idea?" Jack asked for the 3rd time. "None," Albert replied, his voice warm. "She thinks she's coming for an update meeting about the center." "And the chessboard?" Jack gestured. "She'll understand when she sees it." Emily appeared at the doorway, her hair brushed and braided, wearing the same blue dress she had worn the day she made team captain. She was practically vibrating with anticipation. "She's parking now," she whispered. "Rosa texted me." "Okay," Jack said, exhaling. His hand brushed the small box in his pocket. It felt heavier than it was. Not because of the ring, but because of everything it meant, everything it represented. Not just love, but the willingness to choose it again and again, despite fear, despite difference, despite the gap they were still learning to cross. The front door opened. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Sarah entered the room in a soft black dress, her hair tucked behind one ear, heels clicking lightly. Her face lit up when she saw Emily. "I thought this was just a walkthrough," she said with a smile. Then she saw Albert and Jack and the chessboard. She paused. "Jack, what's going on?" He stepped forward, gesturing to the board. "Just one move," he said. "That's all I'm asking." She tilted her head in confusion, then slowly approached. Her eyes scanned the setup, and after a beat, she gasped. "This is the position," she whispered. Jack nodded. "From our first conversation, the day you sat in that coffee shop with Emily, when you stopped being a stranger and started being something else." Sarah looked down at the pieces again. Her queen was exposed, vulnerable. But the move, she remembered it. A sacrifice. A bold, deliberate strategy to win through loss. With trembling fingers, she reached out and moved the piece. Jack stepped closer. "You know," he said, voice low but steady, "chess teaches us that sometimes the bravest move isn't a charge forward. Sometimes it's choosing to give up something precious for something even greater." He dropped to one knee. Sarah gasped again, covering her mouth. "A year ago, I ran into a fire because I thought someone needed help. I didn't know I was running toward my future, toward love, toward you." He took the small box from his pocket and opened it. The ring inside was simple, elegant, not flashy, not corporate, just like her, when she was most herself. "You could have been just a rescue," he continued, "a story to tell. But instead, you became our story. You never tried to replace what we lost. You just helped us build something new, something real." He reached for her hand, voice thickening. "Sarah, will you be the one I build the rest of my life with? With me, with Emily, as our forever." Emily giggled from the corner. "Checkmate," she whispered. Tears spilled over Sarah's cheeks as she nodded, laughing through them. "Yes," she said. "Of course, yes." The room erupted in soft applause. Just Albert and Emily, but enough to fill the space with warmth. Jack slid the ring onto her finger, his hands shaking. She pulled him up into a kiss that felt like breath after drowning. Relief, joy, the sweetness of something long feared now fully embraced. As they stood wrapped in each other, Emily burst between them, hugging them both at once. "You did it!" she beamed. "Grandpa and I had backup plans in case you panicked." Sarah laughed, hugging her tightly. "You are dangerously good at strategy, young lady." Albert approached, eyes misty. I've seen my granddaughter handle billion-dollar negotiations without blinking, he said softly. But this is the smartest deal she's ever made. They stayed late in the center that night, sharing stories, replaying the moment over and over. Albert ordered takeout from Sarah's favorite little Thai restaurant, and they sat on the floor of the soon-to-be chess classroom, passing around cartons and plastic forks. Later, when Emily dozed off against Sarah's shoulder, Jack looked at the two of them and felt something he hadn't in years. Home. Real. Rooted. Built not from wealth or status, but from trust, sacrifice, and the willingness to choose love even when it seemed impossible. Sarah looked at him, her ring catching the light, and smiled. I never thanked you, she said. For the ring? For running into that fire, and for being brave enough to let love change everything. Jack leaned in and kissed her forehead. Best instinct I ever followed. The house wasn't grand. It didn't sit on a hill or come with a gate or a private driveway. It was just a modest, colonial-style home on a tree-lined street between Jack's neighborhood and the city's quieter outskirts. But to Sarah, it was perfect. Are you sure about this? Jack asked as he held the front door open. Sarah stepped inside, her eyes taking in the sunlight spilling across hardwood floors and the gentle creak of the old staircase. The only thing I'm not sure about, she said, is why we didn't find this place sooner. Emily ran ahead, her laughter echoing through the empty space. This room is mine, she shouted from upstairs. It has a window seat. Jack smiled. Guess it's official. The move had been a joint decision. They didn't want a penthouse, nor did they want to squeeze 3 people and a growing future into Jack's old apartment. So they'd found the middle, literally and figuratively, a home that was theirs from the start, not hers or his, but ours. Emily had helped decorate her new room with a combination of posters, chess trophies, and art projects. On the wall above her bed, she pinned a photo of the 3 of them from the night of the proposal, still laughing over pad thai in the half-finished center. Can I paint the walls blue? She asked Sarah one afternoon. Any shade you want, Sarah said. We'll make this place however you imagine it. Sarah had sold her penthouse, choosing to invest the proceeds into the community center's endowment fund. The rest she used to set up a shared account for Emily's future. College, travel, whatever she wanted. Jack handled the mortgage, carefully, deliberately. He insisted on it, not because of pride, but because partnership meant building together, on equal ground. In the evenings, the house filled with smells of garlic and laughter, the sounds of chess pieces clicking on wooden boards, and the gentle rhythms of a life being lived, not performed. One weekend, as Jack unpacked the last of his books, he glanced up to find Sarah standing in the doorway, barefoot, hands on her belly. She wasn't showing yet, not really, but the test had been clear, and so had the moment she told him. He remembered it perfectly. She'd sat on the edge of their bed, Emily beside her, holding the tiny stick with its delicate pink lines. We're going to need another bedroom, she'd said softly. Emily had screamed. Jack had cried. Now, in the quiet comfort of their new home, Jack crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her. Still sure about this? He asked. Sarah leaned into him. More than ever. Emily soon began referring to herself as Big Sister in training and spent hours researching names and mapping out how to rearrange the house when the baby arrived. She also insisted the nursery must include a chess-themed mobile. We're a chess family now, she said matter-of-factly. Their neighborhood welcomed them slowly but kindly. The retired school teacher next door brought over homemade bread. A firefighter and his husband across the street offered parenting tips. No one seemed fazed by Sarah's last name. Here, she was just another parent picking up after soccer practice and helping with math homework. One afternoon, Sarah arrived home to find Emily sitting on the porch, sketching in her notebook. What are you drawing? She asked. Emily held it up, a picture of their house with the 3 of them standing in front, hands joined, a heart drawn above their heads. "So you can take it to work," she said, "in case the board forgets who really runs your company." Sarah laughed and kissed the top of her head. "You?" Emily grinned. "Obviously." Inside, Jack was stirring sauce on the stove, humming softly. He looked up as Sarah entered and smiled like she was still the best part of every day. "This still feels unreal sometimes," he admitted. Sarah slid her arms around his waist. "That's how you know it's good." They had come so far from where they began, him pulling her from fire, her pulling him into a future he didn't know he was allowed to want. Now they stood in a kitchen filled with the scent of home, the promise of new life, and the quiet certainty of love that had been tested, chosen, and real. Jack placed a kiss on her temple. "Dinner in 10, he said. "Perfect," Sarah replied, her eyes drifting toward Emily, still drawing outside. Love had found a home, not in marble floors or corporate towers, but in the imperfect beauty of shared space, shared dreams, and the decision to keep choosing one another. The boardroom felt colder than usual. Sarah sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, a place she'd claimed years ago through grit, vision, and relentless drive. But today, she didn't feel like a CEO. She felt like a target. 12 directors flanked the table, faces tight, suits crisp. Harrison Wells, the eldest and most conservative among them, slid a thick packet across the table. "Ms. Chen," he began without warmth, "your recent personal choices have caused concern among the board and investors." Sarah didn't touch the papers. She didn't need to. She already knew what they contained: media speculation, online gossip, stock fluctuations, all centered around her relationship with Jack. The public attention, Wells continued, the press conferences, the community center, while noble in sentiment, have become a distraction from Chen Innovation's mission. "And what is our mission exactly?" Sarah asked, her voice calm but steely. "Shareholder value, innovation, market dominance," he listed like reciting commandments. Sarah leaned back. "Funny, I thought it was about building a better future." "Sentiment doesn't pay dividends," he snapped. "We need you to issue a formal statement, distancing yourself from this relationship and clarifying that your personal life has no bearing on company policy." "A denial?" she asked. "A clarification," Wells replied. Thomas, her brother, sat silently at the end of the table. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Sarah looked around. All of them had once believed in her, until she'd stepped off the expected path, until she'd started living with her whole heart. They didn't understand Jack. They didn't understand Emily. And they certainly didn't understand what the center had become. Sarah stood slowly. The room stilled. "Let me show you something." She clicked her tablet and connected it to the wall screen. Charts and graphs appeared. Community engagement data, brand sentiment analysis, and one slide after another showing a surprising truth. Their investment in humanity had led to record highs in customer loyalty, talent acquisition, and even revenue. "The community center isn't a distraction," she said. "It's an extension of our brand. It shows that we don't just build products, we build purpose. And when people believe in your purpose, they support your business." Some board members shifted uncomfortably. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I was worthy of this seat," Sarah continued, "that I could carry the Chen legacy. But maybe the best legacy isn't another quarterly report. Maybe it's giving kids like Emily a place to learn and grow. Maybe it's showing our customers and our employees that leadership is about connection, not isolation." She paused. "And as for my relationship, I won't hide the best thing that's ever happened to me. I won't apologize for choosing love. And if that's a problem for this company, then maybe this company isn't what I thought it was." Silence followed, heavy, daring. Then to her surprise, Thomas stood. "Our grandfather built this company from nothing," he said. "He believed in human potential more than any algorithm, and he always told me Sarah had the heart of a leader." He looked at Wells. "I say we follow her lead." One by one, the board members either nodded or avoided her gaze. But no one objected. Harrison Wells stood abruptly, gathered his files, and walked out without a word. Sarah exhaled. Later that night, Jack met her on the porch of their home. Emily peeked through the window, chess pieces scattered across the kitchen table. "You okay?" he asked, handing her a mug of tea. She nodded. "They tried to bury me in boardroom politics. I showed them data and heart." "You do both," he said. "That's your superpower." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I almost let them make me choose between legacy and love." Jack kissed her temple. "But you didn't." "I realized they're the same thing. Our love is the legacy I want to leave." The next week, Chen Innovations announced a new internal initiative: mentorship programs, education partnerships, and a permanent funding arm for the community center. The press loved it. Investors were satisfied. And Sarah, she felt like herself again. On the day of the community center's official opening, families poured in from across the city. The ribbon cutting was simple, the speeches heartfelt. Emily stood at the front of the chess room, pointing to a new brass plaque on the wall: "The Sarah Mason Learning Center in honor of where we come from and what we choose to build together." When Sarah saw it, her breath caught. She turned to Jack, who shrugged sheepishly. "Emily's idea," he said. "I just helped make it happen." Sarah pulled them both into a hug. "This," she whispered, "is the only boardroom I'll ever need." And from that day forward, her title mattered less than the lives she touched. The chess room at the community center buzzed with energy. 2 years had passed since the fire, since the night Jack Mason pulled Sarah Chen from a burning car and unknowingly stepped into a future that would change all of their lives. Now the walls of the once empty warehouse were filled with laughter, learning, and the rhythmic clack of chess pieces. The Sarah Mason Learning Center had become more than a building. It was a beacon, a place where titles didn't matter, where billionaires and baristas sat at the same table and shared the same board. And tonight, it was hosting something even more meaningful: a celebration. Jack adjusted the collar of his shirt, glancing at his reflection in the window. Emily, now 13 and taller than he ever imagined, smoothed out the front of her dress beside him. "You ready?" she asked, grinning. "Are you?" he replied. "You're giving the speech," she teased. "I just get to sit back and look proud." From the podium, Jack could see Sarah across the room, laughing with volunteers. Her pregnancy was now unmistakable, and she glowed with the quiet power of someone who had chosen a life that made her soul lighter. He stepped up to the microphone. "2 years ago," he began, "I made a choice that changed everything." The room quieted. "Not the choice to run into that fire," he clarified, "though that was significant." A soft ripple of laughter. "The real choice came after, when I decided to believe that love was stronger than fear. That difference didn't mean distance. That maybe, just maybe, the life I thought I wasn't allowed to dream of was the one waiting for me if I was brave enough to accept it." His eyes found Sarah's. "I didn't rescue a stranger. I met my partner. I met the woman who showed me that courage isn't just in moments of crisis. It's in the everyday choosing. Choosing to stay, to try, to love." He looked down at Emily, who was smiling up at him, chest full of pride. "I didn't just build a center," Jack said. "We built a bridge between two worlds that only look different from the outside. But on the inside, they're made of the same things: hope, second chances, and the belief that family isn't where you start. It's what you choose to grow." The room erupted into warm applause. Not polite, not formal, real. Later, as the celebration wound down, Sarah joined him at the back of the room. "That was beautiful," she said, resting her hand on her belly. "I especially liked the part where you didn't cry." "I'm saving that for later," Jack replied, eyes gleaming. Emily bounded over, holding up a small trophy. "Won the under-14 Blitz match," Sarah clapped. "That's my girl." Emily leaned in. "When the baby's old enough, I'm teaching them everything I know." "I'd expect nothing less," Jack said. They walked out together into the cool evening air. Above them, the city lights twinkled. Below, the future waited. At home, the framed photograph from their wedding hung in the hallway. Three figures laughing mid-motion, Jack, Sarah, and Emily, captured by Albert Chen, who insisted the best pictures were the ones you didn't pose for. That night, as Emily set up a casual chess game on the living room floor, Jack pulled Sarah close on the couch. "Did you ever imagine this?" he whispered. Sarah placed her hand over his. "Not in a million years." He kissed her temple. "I imagined saving a life. I just didn't know it would be all of ours." They watched Emily explain a new endgame strategy to the baby bump, full of authority and affection. "She's going to be unstoppable," Sarah said. "She already is," Jack replied. They sat there, the three of them, soon to be four, playing, planning, living. No more proving, no more pretending, just being together. And that, Jack realized, was the most powerful move of all.